His last life ended in the worst way possible, bleeding out on the floor while his girlfriend was already in bed with someone else. In that world, the apocalypse had already begun, and people valued resources more than human lives. But death wasn't the end for him. He was given another shot, a second life, with a chance to rewrite everything and take revenge on those who betrayed him. The world was already spiraling into chaos. A volcano had just erupted in the heart of a major city. At the same time, a packed bus was speeding through that same city. Just a few days earlier, the underwater eruption of Mount Fuji triggered a devastating earthquake that wiped out tens of thousands. Now, even the smaller cities were being evacuated as natural disasters continued to intensify. On board the speeding bus, one woman realized in a panic that she forgot to bring any emergency supplies. She figured she'd just buy new ones in Jiangnan City. The guy next to her asked if she'd seen the news. Apparently, all the goods in Walmart and Ali's warehouses in Jiangnan City had already been moved, and that wasn't even breaking news. Dongming Lake in Shenang had dried up, and the Darong warehouse had also been wiped clean. The woman guessed the total loss was in the billions, but the man corrected her. It was in the trillions. Another guy behind them chimed in, saying that this was just the tip of the iceberg. He claimed the world was ending. The others on the bus looked freaked out, but didn't take him seriously. One person even said he was kind of excited about the world ending because, in that case, everyone would be equal. But the strange man wasn't convinced. He'd already lived through the end once, and he knew for a fact that even at the end of the world, there's no such thing as equality. He remembered it all, how cities crumbled, human achievements got erased, and gigantic monsters took over. In his past life, he was just an ordinary delivery guy who got caught up in it all. It started with a strange spike in solar activity that messed up everything. Temperatures soared, earthquakes became constant, and terrifying beasts started emerging from underground. This completely reset the world. A new order was born, one ruled by scarcity. Even a single pack of noodles, a sausage, or an ice cube became priceless. People gave up everything they had just to survive. But this time, he was different. His name was Suchen, and he was reborn exactly 1 month before the apocalypse hit. That gave him a huge advantage. He remembered everything. This time, he wasn't going to waste a second. While he sat thinking, the same woman from the bus approached him. She admitted that his words had scared her, and now she didn't want to face the situation alone. But Suchen wasn't interested. He had no time for clingy distractions. The only thing that mattered now was getting resources. Last time, he lost too much time scrambling for supplies. Not again. When the bus reached its stop, he quickly got off. His plan was already in motion. He headed straight to the warehouse where he used to work as a delivery man. First thing he did was grab his old uniform from a hook and make his way into the storage area. A co-worker at the door reminded him that being 21 seconds late meant losing half a day's pay. Suchen didn't argue. He just walked inside and began preparing. In his past life, the warehouse boss bailed as soon as things got bad, and all his unpaid wages vanished with him. So, this time, he was going to take everything inside as compensation. That's when he activated his spatial ability, a rare power that lets him store massive amounts of goods in a private space the size of a small city. With a thought, he opened up the space and began pulling in everything. Rice, cooking oil, meat, even the shelves themselves. All of it vanished into his storage. He cleared the entire warehouse like it was nothing, and it didn't cost him a single cent. This power was the same one he used in his past life to drain lakes and loot doomed cities. What used to be luxury items, like instant noodles, were now his in bulk. Better yet, anything stored in his space remained frozen in time. That meant fresh food stayed fresh forever. When he finished collecting everything, he finally felt a sense of relief. No matter how bad things got, he wouldn't be starving in this new life. But just as he was inspecting the goods, 3 men walked into the warehouse. They were shocked to see the entire space cleared out. Only Suchen stood there, calm in the middle of the empty hall. They asked him where all the supplies went, and he bluntly told them that he took everything. The men rushed at him, but he used his powers to instantly vanish, teleporting out of the building before they could touch him. This second ability, Space Jump, let him instantly move within a 3-meter radius. It saved his life countless times in the last apocalypse, letting him escape beasts and dangerous places. With both abilities combined, his zero-cost shopping spree was a complete success. He tossed his work jacket into the air and casually walked off, but then his phone vibrated. A government emergency alert popped up on the screen. It warned about increased seismic activity and localized disasters, but reassured people not to panic, and said everything would remain stable. Suchen scoffed. If only they knew. Then the phone rang, and when he saw the caller ID, his face twisted with disgust. It was Zhang Xiaoqian. The mere sight of her name made his hand tremble. Suchen took a deep breath and answered the call. Instantly, he was met with her screaming at him. She was furious that he vanished without telling her. She even brought up the house. How dare he sell it without her permission? She mocked him, asking if he seriously thought another woman would be interested in him now that he was broke. That woman on the line was his fiancée, or at least, she used to be, Jang Xiaoqian. As she yelled at him, she was casually doing her makeup in front of a mirror, completely unfazed. Meanwhile, another man lounged on her bed behind her, Xiao Yu, the one she was cheating with. She kept going, acting like she had any right to make demands. She told him she didn't care about the house, but as a woman, she needed to feel secure, so he should just give it to her. She wanted it signed over, and she wanted it now. Suchin calmly asked if she was done ranting. Then, without even acknowledging her empty threats, he hung up. He remembered everything. How she had clung to him during the apocalypse in his last life. He had searched far and wide for food to feed her, brought her to a safe house, and protected her for years. But it didn't matter. She still betrayed him. Not just with anyone. She slept with Xiao Yu, the same guy who used to beat Suchin whenever he came back empty-handed. Worse, she even accused him of hiding good stuff from them. Eventually, Xiao Yu killed him, right there in the safe house Suchin had built for them. Xiaoqian watched it happen, and didn't even flinch. Right after, she joked around with her new man like Suchin never mattered. He died staring at them, filled with hatred. But now, everything was different. This time, they were going to pay, and they wouldn't die quickly either. He'd make sure of that. His fists clenched, but he forced himself to breathe. There were still more pressing matters. He needed money to get the last few resources. That meant selling the house, fast. He called Manager Lu, his real estate contact, and offered to sell the house for half of what it was worth. Only condition, cash, right now. Soon he arrived at the real estate office, and waiting for him out front were Xiaoqian and Xiao Yu, baseball bat in hand. Clearly, they weren't here to talk. Xiao Yu blocked the door and barked at him, demanding to know why he was selling their house. He warned Suchin that he wouldn't live to see another sunrise. Suchin didn't even blink. He walked straight up, grabbed Xiao Yu by the neck, and slammed him into the pavement like he weighed nothing. Xiaoqian shrieked and rushed forward, grabbing at his jacket, calling him a murderer. Without hesitating, Suchin backhanded her across the face, knocking her flat. She stared up in disbelief. In her mind, he'd never dare touch her. Xiao Yu wheezed for air, lying helplessly on the ground, and leaned down and told him this wouldn't be the end, just the beginning. Then he stepped past both of them like they were nothing, and entered the office. Xiaoqian screamed after him, still trying to act tough. She told him to kneel and apologize before she got mad, but when he turned to glare at her, both of them froze and bolted. She wasn't so loud after that. Inside, the agent greeted Suchin with a glass of water, acting overly friendly. In his head, he was laughing. What kind of idiot sells a million-yuan house for half its value? Still, he agreed to the deal and handed over the contract for Suchin to sign. Done deal. Nearly $1,000,000 in Suchin's account. Even though disasters were happening across Asia, Chengdu, his city, was inland and still relatively stable. Society hadn't crumbled. Yet, while walking down the street, he saw a flyer advertising fast loans, and it gave him another idea. If he mortgaged the house with a property certificate, he could squeeze out even more money. He headed to a place called Great Sea Loans. Inside, he met a huge man smoking a cigarette. His name? Wang Dehai, Xiao Yu's older brother. In his past life, this guy didn't make it long. Mutant beasts ate him alive early on. But today, he was running the place. Dehai laughed when he saw the property's value. It wasn't much, but Suchin wasn't here to beg. He demanded a loan, $500,000, up front, and he wanted an extra $100K on top. He slammed the certificate down on the desk and promised to pay it all back in a week. Dehai chuckled. He figured Suchin was just another desperate gambler, but in his mind, Suchin had just dug his own grave. Still, Dehai agreed. He loved betting on losers. He figured he'd get the house and watch Suchin fall apart. And just like that, Suchin walked out with another $500,000 in his account. Meanwhile, Xiaoqian and Xiao Yu stumbled out of a taxi, still shaken after getting wrecked in public. Xiao Yu nursed his bruised neck while Xiaoqian complained about how hard she was slapped. She swore Suchin would pay for it. Xiao Yu agreed. He'd get his big brother to handle it. Just then, they spotted Suchin again, casually walking down the street like nothing had happened. Confused and furious, they decided to follow him to see what he was really up to. But Suchin had other priorities. He was heading to Green City Hotel. In his past life, when most buildings collapsed due to flooding and freezing, this hotel held up to the very end. He figured the presidential suite inside would be the perfect base, fully equipped, pool included, and stocked with food. As he entered, the hotel's restaurant manager, Li Xinru, greeted him. He told her he wanted to order 1,000 tables of food for a banquet. She blinked in shock at the number, but quickly put on a smile. Prices ranged from $5K to $100K per table, Su Chen went with the 10K option, 10 million total. He offered a 50K deposit up front. Li Xinrui was stunned. She figured he had to be some wealthy second-gen kid. She had no idea the money came from shady loans and a fire sale house deal. She led him to her office to complete the deposit. Along the way, she asked if he was getting married. He played along and said yes. He also asked to book the presidential suite. With that done, Su Chen left the hotel grinning. He'd locked down 10 million worth of food for just 50K. When the apocalypse hit, even a single ice cube would be worth more than gold. Back in the office, the manager sat daydreaming about who this young man's lucky bride could be. Just then, Xiao Qian barged in, demanding to know what Su Chen had been doing there. The manager asked who she was, and she proudly claimed to be his girlfriend. Without hesitation, the manager told her he had booked a 1,000-table banquet. She even praised Xiao Qian, saying she was lucky to have a boyfriend like that. But in her head, the manager thought she was just a 7/10 with a bad attitude. She figured rich guys liked girls with fiery personalities. Both Xiao Qian and Xiao Yu were in shock. 10 million on food? They didn't believe it, until the manager showed them the actual deposit receipt. Suddenly, it all made sense. Maybe Su Chen had been hiding his wealth all along, and this was his way of revealing it at the wedding. Xiao Qian began to dream. Big. Fancy clothes, luxury houses, servants, everything she'd ever wanted. She couldn't believe she almost missed out. Back at his old apartment, Su Chen was finalizing the rest of his supply run. Honestly, calling it a purchase was generous. He didn't plan to return or pay for any of it. The money he had left still wasn't enough though. He needed more, and for that, he turned to one more method: online loan apps. That afternoon, he went full grind mode. He downloaded over 80 loan apps and spent hours uploading selfies, submitting forms, and racking up approvals. By the end of it, he secured around 970,000 yuan in fresh loans. He was wiped out, barely able to stay awake, but there was no time to sleep. There were still essential things to buy: fireplaces, ice makers, blocks of ice, smokeless coal. Stuff you couldn't just grab from a supermarket. Thankfully, everything he needed was available online. Shipping was fast too, and since surviving the apocalypse meant battling extreme heat and cold, these items were non-negotiable. His survival depended on proper climate control. So, he started making calls. First, he ordered 2,000 tons of smokeless coal, putting down 500,000 as a deposit. Then he contacted an ice factory and placed an order for multiple tons of ice. Some companies insisted on meeting in person, so he headed out to finalize deals. As soon as he stepped outside, he bumped into someone unexpected: Lena, a close friend of Xiao Qian's. She was the one who introduced them in the first place, practically pushing him into that toxic relationship. She greeted him with a smile, with Xiao Qian following close behind. Lena claimed that his girlfriend had missed him a lot. He shot back, asking if she missed him or his house. Lena tried to defend her, saying Xiao Qian was just testing him, and that she'd been so upset since he left. Then Xiao Qian jumped in herself. She latched onto his arm and asked if he could go for a walk with her, apologizing for scolding him the day before. It was obvious she was acting. Su Chen shrugged her off. He told her he was busy, and she could go stroll alone. Stunned, she stood frozen as he got into a taxi. Lena nudged her, saying maybe this was one final test from him. So, the two of them grabbed another cab and followed him. At the ice factory, Chen met with the manager, who looked surprised to see such a young client placing such a massive order. They shook hands, and the manager asked about delivery times. Chen said he wanted all the edible ice delivered within 3 days. The manager promised they could do it. It had cost 800,000 yuan in total. Su Chen handed over 100,000 as a deposit and gave them the warehouse address. Before leaving, the manager got curious and asked what the ice was for. Was there a big event happening? If Su Chen was in the event planning biz, maybe they could collaborate again. Of course, Su Chen couldn't tell him the world was ending, so he lied. He said he was donating the ice to charity in Alishan. The manager was shocked, but hey, the money was real, so he didn't ask further. As Su Chen's taxi pulled away, a second cab rolled up. Out stepped Lena and Xiao Qian. They walked over to the manager, claiming to be Su Chen's fiancée and demanding to know what he'd been doing. The manager, still a bit skeptical, told them that he just bought 800,000 yuan worth of ice. The girls were floored. That amount of money, just for ice? He had to be filthy rich. They asked what he planned to do with so much, and the manager repeated what Su Chen said, that it was all for charity. Neither of them believed it, but it didn't matter. Their gold mine might still be in play. Meanwhile, Su Chen had finally finished purchasing every single item he needed to survive what was coming. With everything now set, he decided to enjoy some peace before chaos took over. In his past life, he never got to experience anything close to luxury. Even visiting a small cafe was a luxury he couldn't afford. So this time, he walked into a high-end restaurant to treat himself. A waitress welcomed him and handed over the menu. Everything on it looked fancy. Smoked steak, naan, buttered chicken, all of it was pricey. Then one item caught his attention, a mystery dish that cost 17,000 yuan. He asked about it, and the waitress explained it was a custom meal crafted by the head chef based on the customer's energy. That intrigued him, so he ordered it. As he waited, he thought back to how monsters began appearing at the start of the apocalypse, how some creatures mutated during floods and extreme climate shifts. But his thoughts were interrupted when a stunning pink-haired woman approached with his food. She introduced herself as the chef who designed the dish just for him. Her name was Duan Ya, also known in his past life as Hell's Chef. In that life, she gained fame for turning monster meat into gourmet meals. Her food was so good that people would risk death just to taste it. But those dishes were toxic, made from mutated beasts. Anyone who ate them without the right resistance died horribly. She noticed his dark expression and tried to lighten the mood. She explained the meal she brought, a tuna steak dish with 2 flavor profiles, one side fried in brown butter, the other wrapped in pastry. Suchen took a bite. It was incredible. Absolutely worth the 17,000 yuan, if only she could cook for him during the apocalypse, but he didn't trust her. She could poison him, and he'd never see it coming. Outside, Xiaoqian and Lina were stalking him again. They watched him through the restaurant windows, whispering about how expensive everything was. Each dish inside cost over 10K, and he was just casually snacking. That only confirmed their theory. He had to be loaded. Xiaoqian started imagining life as a rich wife, servants, designer clothes, everything she ever wanted. Next stop in Suchen's self-indulgent farewell tour, the Aria Scans Bar in Chengdu's luxury zone. He didn't get to enjoy places like this in his past life. Once the world ended, places like these disappeared overnight. He figured he might as well enjoy the nightlife while he could. The moment he sat down, a group of women joined him. One of them caught his attention. She looked way less into it than the others. Her friends explained that her name was Yun Yun and she had just been dumped. Apparently, her boyfriend cheated on her with an older woman and never even slept with her. She was devastated and already downed an entire drink. Then she turned to Suchen and asked if he was single and wanted to have some fun. Before he could respond, Xiaoqian and Lina walked in and spotted him with the girl. He noticed them too and acted fast. He grabbed Yun Yun's shoulder and led her upstairs, locking the door behind them. He apologized for the rush, but the girl didn't mind. She was already undressing, ready to spend the night with him. Suchen wasn't about to take advantage, though. Instead, he flicked her forehead and told her to go home, stock up on food, and stay safe. She looked confused, but he gave her one last warning. Don't go to clubs like this again. But then he remembered there probably wouldn't be a next time for anyone. He slipped out the back, just as Xiaoqian and Lina were kicking down doors trying to find him. With them on the hunt, there was no way he could enjoy the rest of the night, so he dipped out and headed home. The next morning, trucks started arriving, one after another, lining up in front of a massive warehouse Suchen had rented just outside the city. All the goods he ordered, coal, ice, equipment, were finally being delivered. As the deliveryman offloaded everything, one of them raised a concern. The warehouse didn't have refrigeration. Wouldn't all that ice melt? Suchen told them not to worry. He had it all under control. He walked with them, directing where each shipment should go. Every box and block of ice was placed exactly where he wanted. He was preparing the perfect supply stash, something he never got the chance to do in his previous life. Meanwhile, back in the city, Xiao Yu had been keeping tabs on him and informed Xiaoqian that Suchen had rented a giant warehouse and was receiving industrial-level deliveries. She was immediately curious and insisted on seeing it for herself. Lina tagged along, and the two women made their way to the site. What they saw when they arrived blew their minds. A full-blown luxury banquet from the Green City Hotel was being set up. Massive tables, endless dishes, and even a red carpet. It looked like the setup for an exclusive wedding after-party. Lina was convinced Suchen was about to propose and then host a huge ceremony with guests pouring in from all directions. Xiaoqian, of course, played it cool. She said that even if he proposed, she might not say yes, but deep down, she was already fantasizing about her dream wedding. They approached Suchen, trying to sound casual. She asked why he was buying so much stuff. What was the plan? Suchen didn't give her a straight answer. Instead, he told her that if she really wanted to know, she could help move the boxes. If she helped, he'd explain everything afterward. She looked at him, horrified. Was he really asking her to do manual labor? Didn't he know she was meant to be a rich lady? But Lina nudged her again, saying this was a test. A rich man always wanted to see if a woman was wife material. Despite how much she hated the idea, Xiaoqian decided to play along. She hoisted a heavy box onto her shoulder, gritting her teeth to prove she wasn't just some fragile woman. Lina joined in too, thinking she might get lucky and catch Suchen's attention herself. Suchen, meanwhile, was loving it. Free labor from two gold diggers? Couldn't have asked for better. There was still a mountain of supplies to organize. Even though the hotel had sent staff to help, it was going to take the entire day to move everything. And thanks to these two, things were moving faster. By the time the sun started setting, they were done. Exhausted, sore, and hungry. Xiaoqian slumped against the wall, breathing heavily. She hadn't eaten all day and had worked herself to the bone, but she was convinced this was the final step. Now, Suchen would propose, and she'd finally become the rich woman she dreamed of. Lena was collapsed nearby, completely drained. She couldn't believe they'd just spent the entire day lugging boxes. Even the ice blocks they moved weighed over 100 pounds. At that moment, Suchen was across the warehouse, handing out fat stacks of cash to the hotel staff who had helped. He thanked them for their hard work and promised to finish payment within the week. As he walked past Xiaoqian, she stood up and leaned against the doorframe, ready for her romantic moment. He looked at her and smiled, then told her she wouldn't be getting paid and she could leave now. Her jaw dropped. She screamed at him to stop joking. All of this had to be for their wedding, right? Right? Suchen just smirked. He almost wished it were a fairy tale ending, but the truth was, he had already sold his house. He was neck deep in debt. Everything here was bought with borrowed money he had no plans of paying back. Lena gasped in disbelief. She reminded him that he had spent over 10 million yuan on food and gear. How could he be broke? Suchen made up a lie, saying a rich boss wanted to donate to charity and asked him to organize the supplies. He was just doing someone else a favor. Xiaoqian snapped. She lunged at him, screaming that he'd tricked her this whole time, leading her on with empty promises. But he easily dodged her. He reminded her he never said anything. All the fairy tale stuff? That was just in her head. She collapsed to the floor, ranting. She thought he was a rich heir, and now he was just some broke scammer. She yelled that she would never marry him. Suchen didn't care. She wasn't even worth thinking about. Lena dragged her away, but not before throwing a final warning at him. He'd regret this. Suchen wasn't worried. Once the apocalypse hit, they'd be the ones with regrets. With those two finally gone, he locked up the warehouse. He glanced over the mountain of supplies he'd gathered. Food, water, coal, ice, everything he needed to survive. Then he used his spatial ability to store it all safely. With his work done, he returned to the Green City Hotel for another peaceful meal. He didn't know how many quiet moments he had left, but he was going to enjoy this one. As he relaxed in the lobby with his food, a loud group walked in, and he recognized all of them immediately. Dehai, Xiao Yu's older brother, had brought a whole crew. He told Xiaoqian to forget about Suchen and stick with his younger brother. He would take care of her. Xiao Yu added that he'd treat her better than Suchen ever did. He even said she should have left that abuser a long time ago. Xiaoqian melted. She let Xiao Yu put his arm around her and they walked into the hotel together like nothing had happened. Xiao Yu promised that his big bro would get revenge for everything Suchen had done to her. She smiled. Maybe Xiao Yu wasn't so bad after all. And Dehai was rich, too. Way better than a delivery boy. All the noise finally made Suchen look up. He called out to them, mocking Xiaoqian for switching partners like socks. Everyone froze. Xiao Yu pointed and shouted. This was the guy who beat him up. Dehai took a long look and realized it too. The same man who owed him $500,000. Now that he knew this was the same punk who attacked his brother and also owed him money, Dehai smiled darkly. Time to settle the score. Xiaoqian looked disgusted when she realized Suchen had taken a loan from Dehai. That meant he really was broke. No second-gen money, no secret inheritance, just a liar. But Suchen wasn't panicking. He casually wiped his mouth after finishing his food. Dehai stormed up to his table demanding repayment. Said if Suchen didn't pay now, things would get ugly. Xiao Yu yelled that they should just take him out right now. The rest of the thugs cracked their knuckles, ready for action. Before they could make a move, Manager Lu stepped in to defuse the situation. Dehai said he was willing to talk things out. If Suchen kneeled down and apologized to him and his brother, then maybe they'd forgive him. Lu asked Suchen what was going on, but he brushed it off, calling them nothing more than pests. That did it. Dehai slammed his hand on the table and shouted that Suchen was finished. He wasn't walking out of here today. At that moment, someone new entered the room, and everything changed. The room fell silent the second the newcomer walked in. He had a dominating presence that sucked the air out of the room. Both Suchen and Dehai instantly recognized him. His name was Gao Cheng, nicknamed the Skull Crusher in the Apocalypse. In Suchen's last life, Gao and the chef Duan Ya became two of the most feared survivors in Shangdu. Rumor had it his terrifying strength came from being inside this very hotel when the first mutations began. But right now, Gao was just an underground entrepreneur with a massive network and dangerous connections. He scanned the room and noticed Suchen's cold stare. Sensing the tension, he chose not to interfere and headed toward the back office where he had business to take care of. Inside, another man waited. Mr. Sunday, pouring wine as Gao entered. Mr. Sunday had heard stories about Duan Ya's beauty and was finally getting to meet her. He handed her a glass of wine as a gesture of respect, but Duan Ya didn't drink it. She stared at the glass and instantly sensed something was off. She could tell he had slipped something into it. Before she could reject him, Gao tried to steer the conversation back to business. Mr. Sunday didn't care. He was insulted that Duan Ya hadn't touched the drink. In his world, refusing a drink was a slap in the face. He told Gao to butt out. It wasn't his problem. Duan Ya realized this was all a setup. Gao had thrown her under the bus to gain favor with Mr. Sunday. She was trapped. The room was full of men more powerful than her, and refusing them might end badly. But suddenly, outside, everything changed. The moon glowed a deep crimson. The temperature surged. Everyone outside began to feel the burn, literally. Out by the pool, Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, De Hai, and the others had stripped down to swimwear to enjoy the night. They didn't notice the heat creeping in until it was too late. Xiao Yu, trying to flirt, took Xiao Qian's hand and told her his love burned brighter than the moon. She ignored him. It was getting way too hot. Upstairs, Suchen sat calmly in his air-conditioned suite, swirling a glass of wine. He watched the blood-red moonlight creep across the sky. It was happening. The apocalypse had begun. Suddenly, the moon flared. So intense, it looked like it exploded with light. A blazing heat wave erupted, and the 4 people outside screamed. They ran toward the hotel lobby, but Dahai lagged behind. The moonlight was searing. Their skin blistered and burned. It was like being cooked alive. Inside the hotel, it suddenly looked like daytime. The guests were confused by the brightness outside. Dahai's men joked that he was probably off flirting, unaware he was outside being roasted alive. Moments later, Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, and Lina burst through the doors, screaming and writhing on the floor. Their skin was red and blistered. They scrambled toward a fish tank, diving into the water to cool off. While they fought over who got to stay submerged, Dahai's men wondered what was going on, and more importantly, where Dahai was. Xiao Yu realized something terrifying. They had left his brother outside. It was too late. Dahai staggered into the hotel, unrecognizable. His skin was scorched, his body covered in open blisters. He collapsed in pain. Meanwhile, Mr. Sunday was still pushing Duan Ya to drink the wine. Before she could respond, the searing heat outside caused panic. The blinds were drawn quickly to block out the light. That distraction gave Duan Ya the chance to avoid disaster. She quietly sighed in relief. Down in the lobby, chaos had exploded. Manager Lu tried to calm everyone, claiming rescue teams were en route. Gao Chang arrived, asking what was going on. One man explained that the heat wave had already injured hundreds. Mr. Sunday tried to call for a pickup, but the authorities were too busy. Power outages were spreading, and nobody could spare help. Dehai's men suggested rushing him to the hospital, but that was impossible. It was suicide to go back outside. Dehai tried calling one of his drivers, Xiaoda, who was still parked underground. Xiaoda drove out of the garage, and instantly regretted it. The light was blinding. The tires blew out, and he had to get out on foot. The pavement was lava. His shoes melted, then his skin. He fell and saw a fully melted corpse lying nearby. His flesh stuck to the burning ground as he tried to scream. Back at the hotel, all Dahai's men heard was screaming on the phone, Xiaoda's final moments. Suchen, meanwhile, was chilling in his cool private suite. News alerts lit up his television. The mysterious heatwave had killed nearly 100 people. Officials urged everyone to stay indoors. Anyone exposed risked skin and respiratory burns. It didn't take long for the city's entire power grid to explode. Lights went out. Air conditioning stopped. The last available hotel room, shared by Xiao Qian, Xiao Yu, Lina, and the rest, quickly turned into a sauna. They panicked, peeling off clothes, trying to stay cool. Xiao Qian remembered Suchen had booked the presidential suite and that it had its own pool. If they could just take it from him, they could survive this nightmare. Meanwhile, Suchen was living in luxury. He had prepared for this. He had backup batteries for his air conditioners. He had a pool. He even had blocks of ice summoned from his spatial space. He laid out a table of food and decided to enjoy a peaceful breakfast to kick off day 1 of the apocalypse. Then came the knock on the door. He opened it, and the people outside nearly cried. The cool air blasted their sweaty, burned faces. Xiao Qian and the others begged him to let them in. Dahai stepped forward, demanding repayment and the room. If Suchen gave it up, they'd let him go. Otherwise, they'd throw him out themselves. Suchen didn't flinch. Instead, he pulled out a pistol and shot Dahai straight in the stomach. Everyone froze. He warned them, take one more step and he'd shoot again. They didn't move. So he fired again, this time into Dahai's leg. Then he told them he'd count to 3. If they were still there, he'd empty the entire clip. That was all it took. They scattered. Back downstairs, things were no better. The hotel was nearly out of food. Manager Lu explained that someone had booked a 1,000-table banquet, draining their supplies. They were supposed to get restocked today, but the heat wave had blocked all deliveries. Mr. Sunday demanded what little food and water was left. The guests were outraged. They tried to riot, but Mr. Sun's bodyguards barely held the line. Then, another commotion. Someone shouted that Suchin had shot a man. Gao Chang was stunned. Getting a gun in this country wasn't easy. This meant one thing. There was a dangerous man upstairs. Xiao Qian told everyone that Suchin's suite had electricity, food, even a pool. People instantly became jealous. A kid rushed forward, asking if there was really fried chicken inside. Then the crowd stormed upstairs. The crowd reached the presidential suite and pounded on the door. When Suchin opened it, cool air poured out, instantly making everyone desperate to get in. They pleaded with him. Just a few minutes, they said. They needed to cool off. A little kid squeezed past the crowd, looking around for the fried chicken Xiao Qian had mentioned. He spotted it on the table and sprinted forward. Big mistake. Suchin kicked the kid in the stomach, sending him flying out of the room and back into the hallway. Everyone froze. Then the mood shifted. He kicked a child. Now they were furious. They screamed that he didn't deserve such a luxury room. People lunged forward, ready to drag him out. Suchin didn't hesitate. He raised the pistol and fired a warning shot. This time, right into the crowd. One of the men in the back collapsed, dead. Everyone stopped moving. Suchin reminded them he was alone, but they only had one life. If they wanted to risk it, they could come try. Back downstairs, Xiao Yu screamed when he saw through a window. His brother Dehai was lying outside, still in the sun, too injured to move. His men held him back, but it was obvious. Dehai was dead. His flesh had started rotting. There was no way to treat his injuries in this heat without medical supplies or electricity. And now, with all rooms booked, they had nowhere to go. That meant Xiao Yu and his crew had to share their space with Xiao Qian and Lina. The girls weren't thrilled. They complained that they deserved their own room, especially with the way things were going. But before the argument could escalate, the power went out. Air conditioning stopped. The room heated up instantly. They started to panic. Xiao Qian remembered Suchin's room had a pool and ice blocks. If they could get rid of him, they could take it for themselves. Upstairs, Suchin was still relaxing, this time in his pool. In his last life, the city's electrical system had failed completely, despite all efforts to fix it. That's why this time, he prepared everything. Battery, powered air conditioners, emergency power, and plenty of cooling materials. He summoned more ice from his spatial space and sat down to eat. Day 1 of the apocalypse, and he was already doing better than last time. Then came another knock. He opened the door and was met by familiar faces, Xiao Qian and Lina, acting sweet. They told him they never meant to take his room. Everything was a misunderstanding. They promised they would do anything, if he just let them stay. He saw right through them. But before he could speak, Xiao Yu burst past them, charging straight at him with rage in his eyes. He shouted that Suchin had killed his brother and would pay for it. Suchin didn't even blink. He pulled out a bat, sidestepped Xiao Yu's punch, and cracked him across the face. Xiao Yu flew backward, crashing into both girls, knocking all 3 of them down. The girls scrambled up, terrified now. This wasn't some pushover. Suchin told them to disappear. They dragged the unconscious Xiao Yu away. He looked up at his automated ceiling turrets. If they hadn't left on their own, he would have handled it another way. No one was going to take what he built. Not this time. Outside, a convoy of military-grade vehicles rolled through the scorched streets. The tires had been replaced with treads, and the windows were heat-insulated. They were built to survive this new world. One of the vehicles stopped in front of the Green City Hotel. Several soldiers in protective suits stepped out and entered the lobby. They asked if someone named Li Zhengo from the academy was inside. A man stepped forward. He was a geological expert, and the government needed his help to figure out what was happening to the planet. The soldiers handed him a protective suit and told him to get ready. Everyone else in the lobby was stunned. One person? Just one? They weren't going to save anyone else? A soldier explained. A broader rescue operation would take place at midnight. That's when the temperatures would be at their lowest. They just had to hold out until then and walk to Silicon Valley Plaza, the designated rescue point. The crowd cheered. There was still hope, but not everyone was happy. Mr. Sunday rushed over, demanding that they give him a suit too. The soldiers ignored him. Then he ordered Gao Cheng to take a suit for him. But before Gao could move, several rifles were raised toward them. There would be no stealing today. The soldiers turned to leave. That's when Xiao Qian spoke up again. She pointed toward the upper floors and shouted that there was a murderer up there, someone with a gun who had already killed people. Lina backed her up. They told the soldiers Suchin was armed and dangerous. One soldier, Xiao Fang, volunteered to check it out. His squad warned him not to be reckless, but he said he'd report back after confirming the situation. He made his way upstairs, approaching the suite carefully, but Suchin had cameras. He spotted Xiao Fang hiding behind a plant. Before the soldier could react, the door flung open and two objects flew out. First a flashbang, then tear gas. The explosion blinded him. The gas made him choke. Before he could recover, Suchen stepped out and knocked him out cold with the bat. Xiaofeng woke up tied to a chair, still in pain, stripped to his underwear. His first thoughts were confusion. How was it still so cool in the room? Then he noticed Suchen standing nearby, examining his military ID while holding a gun. Suchen didn't waste time. He asked the soldier if the government had established real rescue points. Xiaofeng hesitated, then admitted they had, but said it wasn't that simple. The moonlight was deadly. Exposure for even 10 minutes could cause people to faint and die. Still, they had no other choice. They'd modified vehicles and established routes. Citizens just had to get there alive. Suchen untied him and let him go, warning that if anyone came back to mess with him again, the mounted turrets would fire on sight. Xiaofeng got the message loud and clear. He left peacefully, without his gear. Downstairs, the people in the lobby watched him leave, expecting him to say something. But all he said was, "Wrap yourselves in insulation before heading to the rescue point." Mr. Sunday slapped Gao Chang across the face in frustration. Everything was going wrong. The others weren't thrilled either. They knew they'd need Mr. Sun's connections to live comfortably after the apocalypse. But he was becoming a problem. Upstairs, Suchen watched them all from a camera feed. He called down to Gao Chang, asking if he wanted to establish real order in this mess. Both men tensed up, but Suchen diffused the situation. He showed them a cooler filled with edible ice. The moment they saw it, their eyes lit up. One of Gao's men joked that they should just kill Suchen and steal everything. Suchen calmly lifted an assault rifle and aimed it at his throat. Gao held up his hand and said they'd rather make a deal. Suchen agreed. They traded some ice in exchange for keeping the peace, for now. But Gao's mind was already thinking about how to get more. As they enjoyed the ice, Mr. Sunday stormed in, furious that Gao had gotten it first. He demanded his share and started blaming Gao for everything going wrong. Then his eyes landed on Duan Ya, still dressed conservatively while everyone else was half naked from the heat. He approached her and started getting handsy, mocking her for being so pure. When she slapped him, he lost it, ripping her jacket open in rage. That was Gao Chang's breaking point. He stood up, walked over to Mr. Sunday, and without a word, stabbed him in the throat with a knife. The entire lobby froze as Mr. Sunday bled out on the floor. Gao looked around and declared, Suchen was right, the world was over, and people like Mr. Sunday had no place in it. From that moment on, Gao Chang was in charge. With Mr. Sunday dead, control of the hotel officially shifted to Gao Chang. No one dared to oppose him. He made it clear, either follow his rules and survive, or step out into the apocalypse and die. Suchen watched it all unfold from the upper floor. Everything was playing out even faster than in his past life. Gao had taken control of the Green City Hotel just like before, but this time, Suchen was the one who nudged things in that direction. Later, Gao lounged in the lobby, sipping from the same bucket of water that Suchen had given him earlier. Both Xiaoqian and Lina knelt beside him, begging for just a sip. They were desperate, dehydrated, willing to do anything. He laughed and threw the water at them like they were dogs. Then he told them to follow him. He had plans. The girls scrambled after him like stray animals. Gao's men looked uneasy. One of them asked if the boss was planning to head to the rescue point when the time came. Gao scoffed. If we want to survive, we rely on ourselves. He wasn't about to waste time carrying freeloaders. His plan? Use the weaker survivors as bait, cannon fodder to draw danger away. Midnight arrived, and with it came a slight drop in temperature. That was the cue. People began wrapping themselves in insulation, preparing to make the dangerous walk to the rescue point. The hotel's food and water had dried up. Everyone was running out of time. Staying meant death. Going might give them a shot. So they moved. Groups of survivors walked along the empty roads. Some wore boards on their feet to avoid direct contact with the burning pavement. Still, it was brutal. One woman stumbled, landed face down on the asphalt, and melted instantly. No one stopped to help, not even her family. Suchen watched from above as people streamed out. Xiaoqian and Lina were among them, all wrapped up in blankets. They were eager to escape. But, just before they could leave, one of Gao's thugs ripped Xiaoqian's towel away. He reminded them that Gao had fed them. Now, they had to give something in return. He started pawing at her, saying they should have some fun before letting them go. Xiaoqian and Lina tried to act calm and begged him to at least let them go to a private room. Suchen stood at the top of the hotel, silently watching the scene unfold. In his past life, he had walked that road too, but no one had told him to bring a blanket. Even though it was just a short distance, many people died before reaching the rescue zone. That's why he warned them earlier. At least this time, more might survive. Back downstairs, the thug was still grabbing at the girls, laughing off their pleas. Then came a crash. Glass shattered as two pale, distorted figures stumbled into the hotel. Zombies. They were slow-moving, with twisted limbs and sun-scorched skin. Everyone screamed. Xiao Yu asked the obvious, were these zombies? Would they get infected if bitten? Gao didn't hesitate. He grabbed the nearest man and shoved him at the monsters to slow them down. The poor guy screamed as the creatures burned his skin on contact and tore into him. Shin finally decided to step in. He descended the stairs, katana in hand, and told everyone to clear out of his way. The crowd couldn't believe it. Was he seriously planning to take on those things alone? Gao, watching from the side, smirked. Let him try. Either he dies or we deal with him after. Suchin studied the creatures. They weren't regular zombies. They were drought demons, mutants that formed when corpses were exposed to scorching heat. These monsters didn't spread infection. They were something else entirely, drawn straight from Chinese mythology. And unlike zombies, they sometimes retained fragments of memory or emotion. He realized something. One of the creatures, Mr. Sunday, had been killed by Gao. That meant his last desire was revenge, and true to that instinct, the zombified Mr. Sunday ignored Su Chen and lunged straight at Gao Chang. The other demon, though, Dehai, was killed by Su Chen, which meant he only had one target, Su Chen. Dehai roared and charged at him with incredible speed. Su Chen dodged easily and ran straight toward Mr. Sunday instead. With one clean motion, he swung his katana and sliced the creature straight down the middle. Mr. Sunday collapsed. A glowing purple crystal floated out of his body and hovered in the air. Su Chen's eyes lit up. In his past life, Gao must have obtained his strength after killing Mr. Sunday by taking this exact crystal. It was called a crystal nucleus. Rare, powerful, capable of granting abilities to normal humans. This time, it was Su Chen's, but there was no time to celebrate. Dehai was still coming. Instead of fighting, Su Chen used his agility to leap over the rampaging drought demon and land back on the stairs, right beside the prize he came for. Now it was Gao's problem. Cornered, Gao grabbed Xiao Yu and tossed him straight at his mutated brother. The collision knocked both of them into a stack of water containers. Gao shouted for his men to grab weapons. They had no choice but to fight. Su Chen, meanwhile, casually returned to his room. He took the glowing crystal, dropped it into a glass of water, and watched it dissolve. In his past life, he'd learned how these worked. Only 1 in 100 mutant corpses dropped a nucleus. To absorb the power, you had to clean the crystal and swallow it. He lifted the glass and drank it in one gulp. The effect was instant. Power surged through his body, so intense that his clothes ripped apart from the sudden muscle growth. His eyes glowed red. He dropped to the ground, screaming as his body transformed. Then, everything went black. Downstairs, Gao crushed Dehai's head with his foot, panting. They had won, but it had cost them their last water supply. Lena wanted to leave. She couldn't take the heat anymore. But one of the men grabbed her, threatening to cut off her legs if she tried. She begged them to listen. If they let her live, she'd tell them how to kill Su Chen. That got their attention. She explained that Xiao Qian used to be his fiancée. If they used her as bait, Su Chen might open the door. Then they could ambush him. Xiao Qian was shocked. Her best friend had just sold her out. But before she could react, the men turned to grab her. Xiao Qian smiled nervously and said she'd help if they gave her food. She wanted meat. They checked the electric fridge. Everything had spoiled. That's when Gao got an idea. He handed her a knife and ordered the men to hold Lena down. Xiao Qian looked at her friend for a moment, then stepped forward. Lena screamed, begging for her life. She reminded Xiao Qian that they were sisters. But Xiao Qian was done pretending. She accused Lena of betrayal, offering her up without hesitation. Then she raised the knife and stabbed her, again and again. Everyone watched in horror as she butchered her own friend without hesitation. Covered in blood, she stood over the body and laughed. She deserved it, she said. Then she turned to Gao and promised that after lunch, she'd go to Su Chen's room and drink his blood. Gao ordered his men to get Duan Ya, the chef, to cook the meat. They needed every bit of strength to take Su Chen down. One man hesitated. Gao reminded him that without water, they'd all die anyway. If they didn't act, they'd become corpses by morning. The reluctant thug swallowed his fear and ran off to find the chef. Back in the suite, Su Chen finally regained consciousness. The transformation was complete. He sat up slowly, feeling his body buzz with power. His muscles had bulked up, his skin was tougher, and the heat no longer bothered him. His senses were sharper, and even his reflexes felt supercharged. He tested his strength by grabbing one of the massive blocks of ice nearby and crushed it effortlessly with one hand. This was nothing like before. The power from the crystal nucleus had changed everything. As he stood, a knock came from the door. He glanced at the security cam and saw none other than Duan Ya, Hell's chef herself, waiting outside. She looked nervous, clutching her bag, eyes darting toward the hallway behind her. Su Chen opened the door, still naked from his transformation. Duan Ya immediately turned red and screamed, covering her face. He apologized and rushed to grab a towel, realizing he had forgotten to dress. She hesitated before stepping in. Suchin had expected her to be hostile or manipulative, but she seemed genuinely desperate. She said everyone downstairs had lost it. Gao and the rest were going completely feral. The lower floors weren't safe anymore. She wanted asylum, and she came with something to offer. Suchin considered his options. In his past life, Duan Ya had sided with Gao and survived through brutal means. She wasn't someone to underestimate. If he could win her loyalty now, it might save him trouble later. He told her straight up, resources were limited. They barely knew each other. Why should he trust her? She quickly responded. Not only was she a chef, but she was also a certified medical professional. She had studied at Southwest Medical University and had 3 years of surgical experience. That got his attention. Even so, he wasn't ready to just hand over shelter. He warned her, if she planned to stay, there'd be rules. Any betrayal, and he'd kill her himself. Duan Ya, clearly cornered, agreed. She told him she'd do anything as long as she didn't get kicked out. He smiled. Then consider this your home. She blinked, realizing what she just promised. But it was too late. He added one more condition. She needed to behave. No secrets, no games, no betrayal. Her survival now depended on how useful and honest she was. She nodded, accepting the terms. Then he told her to strip. She froze, shocked. But instead of protesting, she excused herself to take a shower. As she headed to the bathroom, it became clear this wasn't just survival, it was submission. But she had expected this. In a world burning alive outside, Sushin's room was paradise. Water, power, food, protection. Compared to the hell downstairs, this was a 5-star bunker. She reminded herself, this was the choice she made. It was either endure the apocalypse with him, or die trying to survive alone. And she wasn't ready to die. If you enjoyed the story so far, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Yume Recap, and stay tuned for the next video.